This meeting of the Margate Planning Board is called to order. Please stand for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Tom Collins.
Here.
Clem Wozleski.
Here.
Rich Patterson.
Here.
Michael Cristaldi.
Here.
Jim Galantino.
Here.
Margaret Gubernalti. Craig Palmisano. Stephen Giesecke. Remy Pelosi. Joseph DiGirolamo. Ron Gruppo. Michael Richmond.
This meeting is being held in accordance with due public notice thereof and pursuant to the New Jersey State Sunshine Law. Notice of this meeting was advertised in the press, and a copy of same has been posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building. All applicants are hereby advised that should you receive board approval tonight, you must come forward and sign a form, which informs you regarding the timing of receiving building permits and mercantile licenses. At the end of your case tonight, please see the board administrator to sign the two information sheets.
Cancel.
I'd like to hear a motion to approve the minutes of December 12th
Second.
and January January 9th.
Tom, you need the mic.
I make a motion, we approve the minutes.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. I'd like to hear a motion for approval of decisions and resolutions. Number 3, 2020, Mark and Penny Neisser. Number 4, 2020, Alan Swift. Number 5, 2020, Stuart and Jennifer Leon. Number 6, 2020, Uri and Elise Feibush. Number 7, 2020, Schedule of Meetings. Number 8, 2020, Election of Chairperson and Vice Chairperson. And number 9, 2020, Appointment of Secretary and Solicitor.
I'll make a
Make
motion.
that motion.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
And I'll just note for the minutes or for the record that if you weren't here for the meetings where those applications were heard or those minutes, you're technically an abstention from voting. But we're good, they're passed.
And we have to announce the case that's not being heard.
No, we don't need to formally announce it. Doesn't look like it's even on the agenda anymore, but that Iroquois Avenue case, Rubenstein was the application. If you're here for that, it's not going to be heard, so you can leave and you'll get a notice in the mail as to the exact date, presumably for next month. Chris put the application in, but he never noticed, so
Okay.
can't be heard.
All right, first case, Thomas E. Reynolds, 216 North Nassau Avenue, Block 415, Lot 16, located in the S25 district, seeking C variance relief for side yard setback and possibly others in order to reconstruct and expand the front porch. Taxes and water payments are current, and proof of advertising and notifying have been satisfied. Mr. McLarnon, please be sworn in.
Mr. McLarnon, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board Chairman and board members. The report is based on Thomas E. Reynolds, 216 North Nassau Avenue, Block 415, Lot 16, within the zoning district S25. This is a substantial benefit variance. It's not a hardship variance. The background is as follows. The applicant is seeking relief from the ordinances of the City of Margate in order to reconstruct an existing front porch and expand it along a non-conforming setback along the side. The purpose of removing the porch is to remove an abandoned underground fuel tank. The new porch will be in symmetry with the existing building and in line with the existing side yard setback. So the two variances, you can see the zoning chart on page 2. Page 3 indicates the documents reviewed to formulate the report. Section 3 on page 3, the variances required are as follows: a minimum side yard setback, whereas 8 feet is a minimum side yard setback based on the lot width. 2.89 feet exists and 2.89 feet is proposed. Again, it's from Section 175, Attachment 4, Schedule B1. It's an expansion of a non-conforming setback. Minimum combined yard setback, whereas 19.98 feet is the minimum combined side yard setback. 17.89 feet exists and 17.89 feet is proposed. So this is basically a 2.09 foot variance. If they move the addition over, they comply with combined side yard setback. However, that would look rather funny on this application. Some comments, I'm not going to go through all the comments, but the existing porch is required to be removed to excavate and remove an existing underground fuel tank, as I mentioned before. The proposed porch expansion meets all front yard setback requirements. The side yard setbacks are existing, non-conforming, and require a variance. Same thing with the combined side yard. All other bulk standards are being met, no other improvements related to the zoning are applicable. When the time the building was constructed, I looked at the old zoning, a 3-foot setback side yard was required, and that was conforming at the time. The property is wider than a typical property within the S25 zone, meaning that the combined side yard setback requirements are bit larger than normal. Otherwise, that variance would probably go away. So the applicant is tasked with the following. They have to prove that the substantial benefits outweigh any detriments. And again, it's not a hardship variance, but they need to put on record the criteria required to approve or deny this application. The only other request would be 2 street trees should be planted in the front. Other than that, I turn it over to Mr. Reynolds.
Just your name and address for the record, I have to swear you in.
Okay, Thomas Reynolds, 8605 Monmouth Avenue, Margate.
And you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yeah, as Roger indicated, I bought this house in the fall, and it had about an oil tank issue, and it was actually leaking, and it was hard to get the oil tank out because the guy poured concrete on top of everything. So the porch was dismantled, and we couldn't piecemeal the porch back. It wouldn't look right. So we just thought it's easier just to demo the whole porch. So the footprint of the basic footprint of the house is remaining the same. The neighborhood down at that end of the street's a little tired, and we're trying to update the house, give it a more modern look within the parameters. But we're not changing anything on the footprint of the house. But the porch is where the porch is. That's the door entry to the house.
Are you raising the house, or you don't have to raise the house?
Not raising the house. As Roger also indicated, it's a pretty large lot. The house has been abandoned for 2 years with nobody in it, vacant. The house was built in 1951, and it just looks tired, and it needs an update. And I think we'll be able to put some energy into it for the betterment, for the better of the community. It will also be a more affordable property for people that want to stay in Margate or come to Margate, because there's what's going on in Margate right now. There's a high price point for a lot of people that can't afford to live here. This house will be more reasonable, modest.
You gonna put it up for sale, Tom?
No,
So you had the porch off, right? Which is the oil tank.
yes,
So you, by doing that, you created a situation where there wasn't going to be any pollution going into the neighborhood. Correct.
this is true. We had testing come in. I got a sign off from the DEP. It's all cleaned up. Originally, we thought it was on the other property, but when they did the test and they started cleaning up, it hadn't gone on to 218.
Okay.
But it's all been remediated, and I have all my proper paperwork
Right.
for that.
Okay, good.
Any other questions from the board? You're done, Mr. Reynolds?
Yes. Thank you.
You don't think there's any detriment by expanding this porch 2 feet out and 2 feet wider, right?
I know. The one thing I've noticed in Margate is that more people they're putting some porch furniture out, like sofas, and they want to sit on the porch. And when they built houses originally in 1950, there was basically room for one little chair. So we're just trying to make it a little bit more in keeping with what people are doing. The porch is very close to the porch at the next house next door, which was 218, which was remodeled in 2012. The same builder built both houses. So they updated that house in 2012. The footprints of the house are going to look the same, except they did a second floor, which we're not doing. 1951, I was going to be born 14 years later.
So in essence, the variance is about 5.2 square feet. That's the only area that's affected.
Just get the public comment.
No. Go ahead.
Anyone from the public have any questions, or public portion is closed? I don't think there's any other comments from the board. Would you read a motion, please?
Sure. Street trees, Roger, or
Yes.
Pardon me?
street trees?
Yes.
Condition.
You okay with that?
They're on the plans.
Oh, they're on the plans, I'm sorry. So someone just needs to make a motion for C variance relief for the following. Minimum side yard setback of 2.89 feet to the deck where 8 feet's required, and for the combined side yard setback, 17.89 feet is proposed and 19.98 feet is required. The conditions will be anything in Mr. McLaren's report and any representations of Mr. Reynolds made.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Tom Collins,
Very easy case. Glad you kept it small. It's nice to see that you actually remediate it and there was an actual fuel leak problem, which means that you've helped our environment tremendously. Hope more people do that. I think this is very de minimis. I think it'll be a improvement for the neighborhood as you start fixing the house and bringing it up to date. It is tired. When I went by and looked at it, it's very tired. And I think I've seen what you've done. I know you'll do a nice job, so I vote in favor.
Clem Wozleski,
I think the aesthetic improvements here far outweigh the minor variances that are needed, and it's nice to occasionally see an existing house saved and enhanced rather than torn down. I vote in favor.
Rich Patterson,
I agree with the previous two board members. I vote yes.
Michael Cristaldi,
I also agree with the other board members and vote yes.
Jim Galantino,
I think the oil tank created the hardship with the deck. I think you would have left it alone and then wouldn't have come here in the first place. So I see that as being the rectified the hardship. I vote yes.
Margaret Gubernalty,
The benefits certainly outweigh the detriments. It's de minimis as I see it. Does not compromise our municipal land use law, and I vote in favor of the application.
Michael Richmond,
Remediating the tank is far more important for the neighborhood than the 5-some square foot variance, so I'm going to vote yes.
application passes 7-0.
Next case is Lee Zwick, 14 South Vendome Avenue, Block 123, Lot 7, located in the S40 district, seeking C variance relief for front yard landscaped area and possibly others in order to extend the front porch and add a roofed second-floor deck above with an attic dormer. Taxes and water payments are current, and proof of advertising and notifying have been satisfied. Mr. McLaren?
Thank you, Board Chairman, Board members. The report is based on the application of Lee Zwick, 14 South Vendome Avenue, Block 123, Lot 7. This is in the S40 zone. This is not a hardship variance. It is a substantial benefit variance, similar to the last case. The background is as follows. The applicant is seeking relief from the ordinances of the City of Margate to increase the area of a first and second floor deck, requiring a variance for front yard landscape coverage. The property has been owned since 1990. The current dwelling was constructed in 2012. It complied with zoning at the time. Page 2 is a zoning chart. Again, I indicate the two variances required. One is landscape area total, and the other one is front yard landscape area. The documents reviewed on the bottom of page 2. The discussion of the variances are as follows. Front yard landscape coverage, whereas 60% is a required minimum front yard landscape coverage, 69% exists and 52% is proposed. Total landscape coverage, whereas 35% is a required minimum landscape coverage, 26% exists and 29% is proposed. I do want to point out that the applicant has indicated on the plans that all areas in stone are to be removed and replaced with grass, which is why the total landscape coverage is actually improving from what is existing. They are requesting a waiver for variance checklist item number 2, survey being older than 12 months. I believe that that waiver could be granted without detriment to the application, as the survey does indicate existing conditions as they exist today. The side yard setback on the right side does not meet the minimum requirement of 5 feet. However, the ordinance permits 4 inches for stone veneers, meaning that the dimension provided is 4.93 feet, but the ordinance does permit 4 inches, so it does not require a variance. Existing ground cover contains stones which is not permitted and likely was installed without permits. However, I've discussed this with the applicant, and they, as I indicated before, they are installing grass to compensate for the loss in the front yard for the overall coverage. All existing street trees shall be maintained and replaced if damaged. That's pretty much it. It's a straightforward case. It's an expansion of a front yard porch. That's it. And the addition of a second floor deck.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good evening. Joel Fleischman appearing here this evening on behalf of the property owner applicant Lee Zwick. Mr. Zwick is here with me in the front row along with our architect and expert Peter Weiss. At some point I'll ask them both to be sworn. I don't expect to really hear from Mr. Weiss, but Mr. Zwick is here in case there's any questions that any of the board members have. As Mr. McLaren indicated, I think this is a very, very nice, straightforward application tonight. We have a beautiful house at 14th South Vendome Ave. It's a 2.5-story house. It has a modest front deck on half of the first floor. And Mr. Zwick, who built this house in, I think it was in 2011. He's owned the property since 1990, but he built the house in 2011. Put a modest deck on at that time. He's simply asking your approval tonight to expand that deck across the front of the first floor and up with now a second floor above it, with some nice dormers being added to add some light to the attic. Aesthetically, it modernizes the house. It keeps it very consistent with, I think I counted maybe 9 out of 11 houses like right around this that have the exact same look. So it's very consistent with the neighborhood. The expansion does comply with all the setback requirements. There's no setback variances involved here. Any of the existing nonconformities, I know Mr. McLaren called out the landscape, the overall landscape as an existing nonconformity. It is improving, but it's still listed as a variance. I accept that as a variance. I didn't necessarily know that that was going to be a variance, but I accept it as one that's required. But I think the rationale for the whole project satisfies both, the necessary criteria for both the overall landscaping and the landscaping in the front yard area. So with that, and I don't want to belabor, I'll have Peter explain the project and then explain the rationale for the variances. So I'd like to have Peter Weiss sworn in, Mr. Zwick sworn at the same time, please.
Sure. If you just each state your name and address or business address, and I'll swear you in.
Lee Zwick, 14 South Vendome, Margate.
Use the microphone, please.
Lee Zwick, 14 South Vendome, Margate.
Peter Weiss, 101 North Washington Avenue, Margate.
Do you each swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Weiss also? Yes?
Yes.
He shook his head. Mr. Chairman, any of this need to?
Well, we accept those credentials.
We've seen them a number of times. Too many to count. Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Peter, referring to your plan that you prepared, would you just explain to the board what Mr. Zwick is proposing?
Okay, so the lot is currently occupied by a two-story house. It's got a detached garage, a pool in the rear yard, a modest deck front and rear on the first floor. What we're proposing to do is, even though the house is only 8 years old or so, modernize the front of the house, and in the process, take the existing front porch, which is on the first floor, enlarge that, add a second floor porch over that, and then a roof on top of that. So that's the improvements to the building. The existing deck is about 7 by 15, and about half of that is eaten up by circulation because of the arrangement of the front steps and the front door. So we're all, yeah, as I mentioned, we're proposing to extend the front, first floor porch across the entire front of the house and add about 1.5 feet towards the street. As mentioned, the deck meets all the required setbacks. The only variance we're seeking is front yard landscaping. So as mentioned, if you went up and down the street, you would have noticed that there's 11 houses. Out of those 11, 9 of them have porches or decks that extend across the whole front of the house, the full width of the house. So to that extent, we're being consistent with the neighborhood. 10 out of 11 of them have a second floor deck. We're the only house that doesn't on that whole block. And also, if you walk down the street, you notice that most of the houses have very minimal landscaping in the front as it stands. So the way I view it is the building is basically right at the average setback for the block. The front porch is proposed to be right at the average setback for the front, which is another way of saying our landscaping being provided is going to be the average for the block because we're the same distance back. So some of the houses are going to have more, some are going to have less, but you know, we're basically right on the average of the block. So to that extent, what we're proposing is consistent with the block, the development of the block, even though we're deficient as far as the zoning is concerned.
You can confirm that we're going to remove the stones as part of the plan. Any existing stones will be removed and replaced with grass. Is that correct?
Yeah, on this, I don't know if you can see it, but the darker green areas currently are stone. So we're replacing, it's basically this area and along the driveway. So that'll be removed and replaced with grass.
So
or
we're
vegetation.
improving the overall landscape percentage is improving.
Yes,
You know what, is it improving from what to what? From
26% to 29%.
And do you see any negative impacts at all to the neighborhood, to the city zone plan, the zoning ordinance?
Like I said, it's completely consistent with the neighborhood.
What goals of zoning do you feel that this application sets?
Well, we're preserving, it's an aesthetic improvement, and we're preserving the light and air and open space for the neighbors by conforming with all the setbacks.
And do you feel that, in your professional opinion, that the benefits of this application outweigh any detriments?
Yes.
Do you see any detriments from this application?
No.
And do you see any substantial impairment to the zone plan, to the zoning ordinance of the city of Margate?
No.
We've reviewed Mr. McLaren's report, and any issues with that? We accept his report as is?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, we really don't have any further comments.
Any questions from the board?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Are there any children in the family?
I have some.
Any grandchildren? Grandchildren visit you?
Yes,
These horizontal railings.
my youngest
are
grandchild is,
ladders for kids to climb over.
my youngest grandchildren's 11, and my oldest is 16.
Kids are kids.
They are.
Just so you're aware, you have a potential hazard there. It doesn't violate the code. It used to violate the code, but a few years, for some unknown reason, it was changed. But keep an eye out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone from the public have any questions, comments? Public portion is closed. If the board has no further comments, would you read the motion, please?
Sure, someone needs to make a motion for C variance relief for the following, front yard landscaping coverage, 60% required, and they're proposing 52%. Total landscaping coverage, 30% is required. It's an improvement, but they're still under the 35%, so they're going from 26% and they're up to 29%. The waiver is from the survey being older than 12 months old. As Mr. McLaren stated, the survey they submitted does show the conditions on the property accurately as they exist today. And then the conditions will just be anything in Mr. McLaren's report, and the applicant will comply with any representations it made during the course of the hearing.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Tom Collins,
This application seems to be pretty cut and dry, simple. It's very de minimis. I actually like the fact that you're going to take the style and look of the house and actually change it, we went for a lot of years with a lot of houses that look like this. And I think that what you're doing is going to not only improve the neighborhood, but it'll improve the value of everybody else's house at the same time. I think it's really nice. I think it's good for the neighborhood, and it's very de minimis, so I vote in favor.
Clem Wozleski,
As per the previous application, I think the aesthetic improvements to this project far outweigh any minimum detriment caused by the reduced landscaping. The proposed new design brings some order to a rather disjointed facade, and I think we'll sit very comfortably with the neighbors. I vote in favor.
Richard Patterson,
I also approve the application. I looked and immediately saw that all the other houses had the same thing. I know one of our considerations is aesthetic improvements to the neighborhood, but I think what is happening, which is a reversal of what happened over the years, was front porches went away, which kind of hurts the neighborhood as far as living experiences go, and I think it really helps to have those things and helps the whole attitude of the neighborhood, and I wholeheartedly endorse it.
Michael Cristaldi,
I see no impact on the neighborhood, and it's consistent with almost the whole street. I think Pete did a good job drawing it to bring it in, so I see nothing wrong with it. I vote yes on the application.
I also forgot to mention, I appreciate the fact that you increased the landscape overall. That means a lot.
Jim Galantino,
Yeah, I agree with Mike. It does bring it into conformity with the rest of the buildings on the street. And I don't know why it didn't put a second floor deck. Anyhow, I agree, this does improve the house, and I vote yes.
Margaret Gubernalty,
I am in agreement with Mr. Cristaldi and Mr. Galantino. Certainly is consistent with the whole neighborhood and is certainly an improvement, and I vote in favor of the application.
Michael Richmond,
Is there an ocean view from the second floor deck now? Is there an ocean view from the second floor deck with the new deck?
Possibly.
Possibly. Yeah, I liked it. I think, I agree with everybody else. I've done work in that neighborhood, and, you know, a lot of the houses have the decks. It looks like the plan that Pete drew does have a lot of landscaping in the front, so I approve it.
application passes 7-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members.
Thank you, everybody.
You're welcome. Next case is Margate, 14 South Hanover Avenue, Block 110.02, Lot 1.01, located in the S25 district, seeking C variance relief for front yard landscaping. Is this the same case? Lot coverage, building coverage, and possibly others in order to add a new entranceway, second floor deck, and revise the existing third floor decks. Taxes and water payments are current, and proof of advertising and notifying have been satisfied. Mr. McLaurin?
Thank you, Board Chairman, board members. Report is based on the application of Margate, 14 South Hanover Avenue, Block 110.02, Lot 1.01. This is within the S25 zone. Background is as follows. This is a substantial benefit case. This is not a hardship variance. Background is as follows. The applicant is seeking relief from the ordinances of the City of Margate in order to construct a new, larger first-floor deck, a second-floor deck where one does not exist, and to replace and reconstruct two existing third-floor decks, which are existing non-conforming. Several variances are required as described below. The application may have been part of an approval for a subdivision, of which conditions will need to be checked. I did some research. The subdivision was approved by the board in 2005. Thank you. I don't have the actual plans, but we'll get into some discussion about that. Page 2 is the zoning schedule for the S25 zone, specific to this property. Page 3 are the documents reviewed. Section 3 on page 3 are the variances required. Front yard setback to the porch, whereas 5 feet is a minimum front yard setback, 3.64 feet is prevailing. 5 feet exist. I know they indicate 1.5 feet to the existing porch, but that's to the landing. And 1.5 feet is proposed, requiring a variance. Again, that's Schedule B1. Variance number 2 is a front yard setback to the second floor. It's the same thing, where 5 feet is a minimum front yard setback required, 3.64 feet is prevailing, and 1.5 feet is proposed, thereby requiring a variance. Minimum front yard landscape coverage, whereas 60% is required minimum front yard landscaping, 37% exists, and 35% is proposed, requiring a variance. Third floor decks, again, this will need to be confirmed with the architect or the applicant. Whereas third floor decks are not permitted at this location, 2 are existing and 2 are proposed to be slightly expanding, thereby requiring a variance for a non-permitted deck. Waivers requested. There are a couple waivers being requested. Item number 1A, copy an area map showing all lots within 200 feet of the property. Checklist item 1D, copies of subdivision, site plan, or conditional use application when applicable. Again, this was a subdivision approved in 2005. Checklist item number 2, survey older than 1 year old requires a certification of the applicant or owner that the survey accurately represents the status of the premises. I'll address the waivers right away. I think all waivers could be granted without detriment to the application. I think some discussion of the subdivision and prior approvals may be warranted. Comment, some of the variances indicated in the application are not needed as they are existing non-conforming and not being expanded, which is why you'll see a difference from the zoning chart on the plans versus the zoning chart in my report. The front yard porch and deck setbacks need to be corrected to show what exactly is existing. The landing is not a porch or a deck and not to be considered as such. Therefore, the front yard deck as today complies.
But will
They were seeking variances.
But it says 1.5 feet. If it goes back to the actual deck itself, what
That
is it?
goes to the landing.
Right.
Landing doesn't count as.
Right. What is it to the deck?
I scaled about 5 feet, so it complies. The first floor deck is being expanded almost to the property line and requires a variance, again, at 1.5 feet. It should be noted that the existing porch complied at about 5 feet, which is the required minimum. The second floor deck is being added and also is non-compliant in regard to front yard setback and requires a variance as it does not meet the minimum or prevailing. Front yard landscaping does not comply existing or as proposed and requires a variance. The third floor decks are not permitted at this location, however, they are existing. They appear to be proposed to be expanded and require a variance as they are closer to the front of the building. Again, we can discuss that. I'll give the applicant testimony, time to discuss that. My take on it is the third floor decks may have been required to have pent roofs as they have been existing, and the decision and resolution of the approved subdivision is needed. I looked at that, that was not in there, but it may have been a condition of that approval for the actual plans for the building. All landscaping, shrubs, street requirements are required to be met. All existing street trees shall be maintained and protected. I discussed the waivers. And I just want to point out to the board that if you look at that third floor deck now, you can't even tell they're there. You see the roof line, and I believe that's the intent. But they're proposed to be opened up, and that they're here for other reasons and besides that. But I'll turn it over to the applicant to further discuss that.
Okay. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Eric Goldstein on behalf of the applicant, Margate. Prior to getting started with the actual testimony about the variance itself, we're going to talk about the house and what's next to it. So I'm sure all of the board members have been out there. You've got almost identical homes built side by side, which was the result of a subdivision in 2005. We couldn't find anything in City Hall or anywhere that talked about conditions as to what would be built in the homes with regard to that subdivision. I don't know if any of the board members were here then or if that was something that would have been on the record, but respectfully to the city, the presumption that a pent roof would have been required or something else might have been required without the proof that it was, we can't be bound by that.
I agree with that.
The design really isn't awesome. If you look at what's here now, it was just kind of the architecture at the time. The third floor decks exist in both homes, and they are built into the house itself, which looks a little odd. So when we talk about correcting that and opening it up, although it is an expansion of an existing nonconformity, if you look to the house on the left versus the house on the right, clearly the house on the right is more architecturally pleasing. Why that was built, we don't know. Mr. Godek just bought the house recently. The person from whom he bought it purchased it from the developer, so we don't have a real good history as to how we got here. But the house as it stands now, it's a little bit ugly and needs to be updated. When Mr. Godek purchased it, his idea initially was to tear it down, start from scratch, but looking at the construction costs and issues regarding raising it up didn't really work for him. So this is the best possible scenario that he could come up with, but it does require variances. So, and I'm sure the board members saw, you've got this house and the house next to it. It's which one is worse? I mean, you could flip a coin. Neither one have great streetscape appeal, but okay, it's what we're working with, and we only can do so much. So the idea here is, and Roger pointed out correctly, the distance from the property line to what ultimately will be the porch is the exact same distance from the property line to what is now the stairs. So even though it's semantics, when you're looking at the house now, there's a very short distance to the stairs and to the landing. It's the same distance from the property line to the porch. So, there's all these exceptions in the rules as to what counts towards coverage and what doesn't. The way the house is set up now, it's the same distance from the outside edge of the stairs to the property line as it is from the proposed porch to the property line. I think that's important to consider because it's the structure that matters. The structure being the stairs, even though it doesn't count, or the structure being the deck. If you look again at the properties side by side, the way those stairs come down and are flared in an A shape versus the deck, I would say the distance again from the outside edge to the property line are identical. This would kind of fall into the de minimis change to the exterior of the house category. The only real change is above, there's another deck being proposed that sticks out the same distance, and that's not there now at all. But that does kind of break up the house from the ground level up to the top level as well as we could under the circumstances of dealing with the internal structure. So prior to putting on the rest of the case, Mr. Godek is here, and I would like him sworn, Mr. Manos, to testify as to how we got to this point since he purchased the house and his options in what he considered going forward. And he can tell you probably better than anyone what is really going on upstairs with those third floor decks and how they're basically built into the roof. So, Mark, if you don't mind, come forward, please.
Sure, just state your name and address for the record.
Mark Odick, 14 South Hanover.
And Mr. Godek, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
Thanks.
All right, Mark, you heard Mr.
Yes.
McLarnin's reading of his report, my little opening statement. So make sure you speak to the mic and explain how we got here with your design and what you were attempting to do and what we're trying to do going forward.
Well, sir, let's start with the third floor decks. Those decks are actually built into the house. The actual drainage goes to a single drain in each deck through the cavity of the house, the outside wall of the house. And actually, there have been flooding issues within our house prior to our purchase. Actually, it happened 2 times, or actually it happened 3 weeks before we closed when we bought the house. There was flooding that went from that roof, flooded there, and then went into our kitchen and caused, I think, somewhere in the order of $15,000 in damage. And I think before the house was actually put on the market, or after, at some point it was even a year earlier, they thought it was a door that was open, but actually it was the same flooding issue because it backed up into a single drain that was enclosed. It had no scupper, nothing for relief. And I think it caused more like $25,000 in damage the time before that. So what we're trying to do, at least for that, is to open it up, number one, to alleviate the idea of any type of barrier for water just to come off the deck, because we're going to resurface the underside of the decking. But also, when you are on that deck, if you are sitting down on a chair, you cannot see out. You cannot see the water. If you're standing up, you can see the water. If you're not, if you're sitting down, you cannot. So we're trying to accomplish opening it up for a couple different reasons. So that's the idea of the third floor deck. The other ones are that we're trying to create a covered porch, so we can sit outside. It's an 8-foot width from total dimension from the edge of the house to extending out, enough to put some chairs in there, but not overly large that we're putting large furniture or have huge gatherings, but it's enough to at least come into the house and then be able to have some chairs, some seating right there for people when they come, or if we're sitting down before, after beach, whatever. And then also to have another space up above that's not covered, that we don't think is very large or obtrusive, and trying to have some enjoyment outside instead of, we don't have really any open space to really sit down when you're from the living area of the house. So,
Mark, this is fairly important. All of the third floor outdoor areas and then the second floor and first floor are going to remain open. You don't have any intent to close them in or put up curtains or anything that would otherwise block the views of your neighbors, correct?
no, absolutely not. And I know that my neighbor who has had the same water issues on the third floor deck has talked to some people within the city of possibly enclosing that area. We have no intent. We want to keep it open. We bought the house to enjoy the outside and be able to look outside, and the second and third floor decks have views of the ocean. So we want to make use of that.
So it's not your intent to infringe upon anybody else's light, air, or open space, correct?
Absolutely not.
Now, with regard to the first floor landing and the stairs, those stairs are fairly wide and they come out almost directly to the property line, correct?
They do. I mean, and we purposely did not want to go obviously any further than that existing landing. We're trying to stay pretty close within that footprint. And if you look at it, they're rickety. I mean, the railings are need replacement. And I mean, I don't understand why there are two sides of a stairwell in a house like that. And just the aesthetic of it is pretty poor. And you know, my realtor and architects I spoke to, yeah, you got two ugly stepsisters sitting next to each other, and we're trying to make it look updated and differentiate a little bit and make it have some curb appeal to it.
And no matter what you do, you need stairs into your house, correct? That's your primary means of entry and exit, right?
Correct.
So you're gonna either have those stairs, a deck, or some other system of stairs to get in and out, but it's not as if removal of those steps would otherwise give the house the house wouldn't be any less obtrusive, because it is close to the property line. We need to acknowledge that. But no matter what's there, it's going to be close to the property line, regardless if it's steps or if it's a deck, correct?
That is correct.
There's no other option, no other entrance. That's your front entrance, and that's it.
It is. I mean, and there really aren't any other ways for us to use the outside of the house. We have those third floor decks that really, they feel claustrophobic when you're in them.
Okay. Let's talk about the decks for a second. The way they're set up now, the decks literally are cut into the roof, right? Explain, I know you said you couldn't look out, but when you walk out of the door to those decks, what are you looking at? There's a little bit of a wall, and then there's, yeah.
When you come out, you are essentially looking out into I don't know the exact height, it's probably 3.5 feet high. And that is the entire, so you have a side wall, so if we're sitting.
You just take the microphone so we have a clear back. Thanks.
So if you come out this door right here, there's a wall here, so there's a face that you cannot see anything past, and same thing on this side. And we're not going to change that, but certainly here you have somewhere in the order of 3.5 feet high. So if you're sitting down, you have no view out. You're staring at a wall essentially in the sky. That's all you're seeing. And we're obviously trying to open that up to be able to have a view that exists, obviously, out into the ocean.
Few more questions. Internally, what are you doing along with this renovation project in order to update the house? You can use this one.
Okay. Well, we did some cabinet facing, replacing counters and in the kitchen to update the kitchen. And the other part is that by adding the second floor deck, we are going to obviously open that up to be able to get from the living area to the outside. Whereas right now there is a very small rear deck that's also enclosed within the footprint of the house itself. So there's really no other way to really sit outside and enjoy it.
Maybe the way to put this respectfully to the architect who designed it is, you're really trying to fix bad architecture, both in the house and out of the house, but having the minimum amount of impact on the surrounding property owners, correct?
That's correct.
Ladies and gentlemen, we do have with us tonight the gentleman who drew the plans, in case any of the board members have technical questions about what's happening outside of the house or inside. I'm not sure if that's going to add anything to what we've already discussed. Project manager for the project is here.
If nobody has questions, we don't need to swear him in. Clem, you have any questions?
Yeah, but I can't think of them.
Join the club. Okay, don't. Oh. Well, wait, he's got to be sworn in if you ask him.
I was going to ask Eric. I was not-
okay.
If he needs to answer a question, we'll
Yeah,
swear him in.
well,
Because I've been in the house before. The second floor is, where the second floor deck is the living space
again, Mark, you
or the bedrooms?
Matthew Carney.
Sorry.
Okay,
I'm
this-
project manager for Mark Zawacki,
And what's the business address there?
1555 Zion Road, Northfield.
Mr. Carney, do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do. So this, where the...
Needs a microphone.
just grab the mic, yeah.
Where this sliding glass door is here, this is a stair landing to the third floor. So it's like a switchback stair from the, from the first floor to all the way up, switchback. So that's how they would access that second floor deck.
Okay.
From inside the house, you mean?
Yes.
Right,
From
okay.
inside.
All right.
Yeah. Mark, when you win the entrance door off the landing, you then have to go up a few foot of stairs to get to the actual floor level? No, this deck here is at, 6 inches below the finished floor level here.
Well, I'm looking at the.
No, you're right. It's actually, when you come in through the main entrance, you are halfway between the first and the second floor. So the second floor the second deck is technically between the second and third floor. Okay?
It's like an odd split level inside. You really can't tell from outside, but when you walk in, it's not as if you're on one floor and there's a couple steps up to the next, which, again, they can't do anything about that.
We evaluated the alternative of actually replacing all the interior stairs, and the cost blew up, so we obviously
What
don't do it.
interior space is behind those sliding doors?
It's a landing between the second and third floor.
At
So-
the-
and
At the stair?
The stair. So the stair landing, there's a landing that's probably about 3 feet in width behind that sliding glass door. And so you would go, the main living space is on the second floor. That's where the kitchen and living room is. And the idea is you have a half a flight of stairs to go up to get there if we're going to use that for, let's say, exterior, if you want to eat something outside.
Does that roof come out over the deck?
What is that?
Whoa. It's a faux, it's a little aesthetic that comes out about a foot extended out. So it's really not part of, it's really aesthetic. It doesn't actually continue within the inside of the house.
Can I borrow Rick Clem's red pen?
If you go down the street towards Venter Avenue, I drove by and looked, but I don't have a strong memory of it. Are there other second floor decks along down the street? And do the decks come out as far as this?
I don't know. I know the third floor deck of the property directly next door it mirrors this. Off the top of my head, Mr. Wazlewski, I'm not sure what other homes along the street. Maybe Mark, you would have a better idea.
Eric, it does, there is.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Cristal.
So you're not coming out any further than adjacent properties?
I can't say that, but it sounds like some of the board members might be able to. I don't want to give that testimony without
It was
being.
hard to tell.
What I know we're not coming out any further than is what's there now.
I know
And even though, Roger's correct, the stairs don't count, but the deck counts. So what's better or worse? The deck obviously looks better, but it counts against the setback. The stairs, because of the need to have steps to comply with our base flood, generally go up higher, meaning there's a landing. And that's why the commissioners with the board's acquiescence passed the stair deduction so that you get the deduction when you're out a little further so that you're not penalized for having a house that's higher. In this case, we don't want Mr. Godek to be penalized because he has stairs now that come out. And realistically, there's really no other way to get into the house with stairs and some landing. So it's going to look like this, or it's going to look like this, referring to the record to the house on the left and the house on the right. Either way, your distance from the property line is minimal. And without knowing exactly why it was built like that, it could have just been that in 2005 it was cheaper and easier to construct like this because they built two identical houses rather than just to spend a little more time designing it, because it might have been that they came to the board for subdivision but never came back because we couldn't find anything. They might not. This might have been by right in 2005.
Eric, I've got this on Street View, and there's decks all over the place, second floor decks, the whole street.
So it's our contention that there really isn't any negatives associated with this application. To the extent there would be, the benefits far outweigh any detriment. And the board is fairly good about looking at projects, and tonight we've had two in front of us, and this one, where it's not a tear down, it's not an attempt to squeeze in 10 pounds into a 5-pound bag. Property owner was fairly honest about he wanted to maybe do something else and couldn't afford it, so this is the best he could do. But you're really seeing a great increase, and I'm not saying that the property owner next door would do the same thing, but this is kind of an example of what the code is really pushing us towards now. It's either tear down or add something to make it as good as can be, and this is really as good as it can be. There's not much more we can do to make the house suitable for Mr. Godek and his family.
Any young children or grandchildren in this house?
Young children, no. I have a senior high school and senior college.
Well, if you get any grandchildren, watch those railings.
Understood. Sorry?
I have a question, Eric. On the third floor decks, this thing says they're going to be increased in size. How's that going to happen?
Yeah, you can.
What's going to happen is because we're going to be taking out the wall, it's that exterior wall, basically this little piece right here.
The pent wall?
Technically, we will pick up the cavity space. So we'll be picking up 6 inches plus a lip because we will be resurfacing that entire area. So it may be that the deck is extending 6 inches, or it's going to have a lip that's, the actual dimension of the deck will be 6 inches bigger because you have this reduction of the wall, the exterior wall, plus a little bit of overhang.
But Mr. Gruppo, the idea is not to push it out further and to cantilever in where it's a foot or 2 feet out. It's just going to be the width of the wall plus the minimal amount of fiberglass that has to go over the edge. We'll call it the lip, whatever it is.
When you put the rail back in, you won't.
So you're just going to
You
cap
won't
But
it?
we're not going to get
You
that,
put the
exactly.
rail in.
Tony's right. Once the rail goes back in, you'll have,
I'm not picking up more usable space.
No.
So you're just capturing the space
But-
where the walls are?
correct. But Mr. Gruppo, technically, it's an expansion, so we want the board to at least see,
Okay.
that it's something we can't control. The width of that area will go away, and it'll be a thinner railing, so 4 or 5 inches of additional space, maybe?
It's not usable.
Not usable, right. So unless the board has any further questions, that's really it. This is one we're calling like as good as we can do with regard to the design.
I did talk to the architect about this particular project about a year ago, and we talked about the drainage. So there is a drainage problem, and I agree from an engineering perspective, the corrections being attempted are practical.
Anyone for the public have any comments or questions? Public portion's closed. If there's no further comments or questions from the board, would you read a motion, please?
Someone needs to make a motion for C variance relief for the following: a front yard setback to the porch of 1.5 feet where 5 feet's required, 1.5 feet where 5 feet's required, front yard setback to the second floor deck of 1.5 feet where 5 feet's required, a variance from the minimum front yard landscaping requirement. They're proposing 35% or 60% is required, and for the third floor decks, the two existing decks are going to be opened up, so they're not permitted in this area, so a variance for that. And then there's 3 checklist or submission waivers: the area map showing all properties within 200 feet, the prior subdivision plan, and the survey is older than a year. The conditions will be anything in Mr. McCarn's report unless otherwise modified on the record or during the course of the hearing, and the applicant will comply with any conditions it made during the course of the hearing.
Leo, that front yard setback is to both decks? First and second floor?
Right.
Okay.
Yep, I thought I said that, but yeah.
We accept
the
those
extent I did.
conditions, Mr. Manos, thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have concrete in the governor's strip, or is it grass?
I'll make that motion.
Wait,
What are you doing?
is there concrete in the governor's strip, or is it grass?
The strip between your property line and
The curb strip, is it concrete or grass?
That is
Grass for the
and
tree.
then there is a paver that comes off of this stairwell here and then back out. So there is.
No, what we're concerned about is people are cementing in the governor's strip along the curb, and we,
Oh, between the curb, oh, no, that's grass.
that's grass?
Yeah,
That's,
between the sidewalk and the curb.
yes,
Correct.
yes,
And
thank
there
you.
is a big tree.
Yes. Thank you. I'm sorry, go
We're
ahead.
not, we have no intention of changing that.
That's it, so someone needs to make that motion. I don't need to repeat it.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Tom Collins,
To me, this is a little bit tough, because as Clem will tell you, him and I were on the board back in those days, and we never would have approved a third floor deck hidden in. There was, if you weren't on the bay, on the ocean, you just didn't get it. So how these got there is way beyond me. But again, you can't punish the new owner for what happened in the past. Somehow they got slipped in. Aesthetically, what you're doing is a hell of a lot better than what's existing, excuse my French. I think it's going to be an improvement to the neighborhood. Maybe it'll give your sister property owner a push to maybe want to do something with those too and really improve the whole street. So I vote yes.
Clem Osleski,
Well, I do have a problem with adding any additional construction so close to the front property line. But I did note that no neighbors came to object to it. However, anything that could be done to this, I'll be kind, unattractive structure almost overcomes any negatives that might be involved, so I'll reluctantly vote yes.
Richard Patterson,
Occasionally, things come before the board that baffle me, and to see third-floor decks designed like that, which makes them kind of useless, baffles me. But I suspect what could have happened is they weren't approved, and they were put in after it was built, and you can't see them.
You're right.
So it's a nice way of, not a nice way, but a way of sneaking them in, and nobody really knows they're there. But they exist now. That's not our problem. They exist, and they're useless, and this makes perfect sense. I see nothing but benefits from what you're doing, and it certainly is not going to be looked at as the ugly stepsister when it's done. It's you have what you have to work with, but I think you're doing a good job with it. So I approve the application. I see no negative impact.
Thank you.
Michael Cristaldi,
I see no impact on the neighborhood at all. It's pretty consistent going, and as Clem put it, we're really taking an eyesore and at least going the right direction with it. It looks a whole lot better. I think it's an improvement for the neighborhood. I vote yes.
Jim Galantino,
Yeah, those two houses just don't fit there, do they? Looks like they deserve to be like somewhere else. Maybe on your street. No, I don't see any problem with that. I think everybody cleared up. I think Rich's comments about the issue with the nightmare-looking building, this will improve it. So I vote yes.
Margaret Gubernalty,
Well, since Tom approved those third floor decks back in 2005, this is nothing but an improvement aesthetically to the neighborhood. It's de minimis. They're ugly step brothers. I think it's an improvement, and I vote in favor.
Michael Richmond,
With all the other board members, it's a definite improvement to the neighborhood. Nobody came to testify against it. I know the neighborhood, a lot of the houses do come close to the property line in the front. They're older homes, so I'm going to vote to approve it.
application passes 7-0.
Thank you all.
Next case,
We can collect these plans, they can be the plans for compliance. They want to submit these plans back to me, or Vaughn.
which plans? The one we just did? Be sure to turn your plans in, board members, at the end, because we can use those plans again. Next case is Michael Schnoll, 17 North Exeter Avenue, Block 206.02, Lot 28. Located in the S25 district, seeking C variance relief for side yard, building, front yard porch, rear yard pool setback, and possibly others in order to construct a new single-family home. Taxes and water payments are current, and proof of advertising and notifying have been satisfied. Mr. McLarnon?
Thank you, Board Chairman, Board members. My report is based on the application of Michael Schnoll, 17 North Exeter Avenue, Block 206.02, Lot 28, within the S25 zone. Required first floor elevation is 9 plus 3 to equal, or 12 to the bottom of the floor, based on the effective firm. They're actually putting the garage underneath, so they have the 9 feet to work with. This is a hardship variance and a substantial benefit variance case. Background is as follows. The applicant is seeking relief from the ordinances of the City of Margate in order to construct a new 5-bedroom single-family dwelling where a 3-bedroom unit exists today. The property is a unique shape, and the one-side property line represented the former right-of-way line for Old Winchester Road, which has since been vacated. A portion of the variance request is a hardship request. However, substantial benefit testimony is required as well. Page 2 is the zoning schedule. Top of page 3 is a remainder of the zoning schedule. Section 2 is the documents reviewed. All the plans have not been dated. John, you'll have to give a testimony as to the date of these plans, so we have them on record. Section 3 of the variances required. First one is a front yard setback to the porch, whereas the prevailing setback is calculated to be 9.54 feet, and the front yard setback proposed to the porch is 8.37 feet, therefore thereby requiring a variance. Rear yard setback to the building, and again, this is a hardship because it involves calculating the lot depth, whereas the rear yard setback required is 20% of the lot depth or a 10-foot minimum, 14.2 feet, 14 feet is proposed. The applicant went to 14 feet because that's the one side of the depth. I don't think they should change the plans to accommodate 0.2 feet. Combined side yard setback, again, this is a purely hardship whereas the 15.91 feet based on lot width is a required minimum combined side yard setback, and 10.91 feet is proposed. So there's a variance of 5 feet there. Variance number 4 is the swimming pool clearance, whereas 3 feet is a required minimum horizontal clearance to any vertical structure, and 0 feet is proposed along one side. I want to comment on that, that it's 0 feet to a post, and the other 0-foot setback is actually to a deck above it, or a building above it.
I don't see it. Is it on the plans? Or am I missing something?
There should be a note that says a building above.
It says building line above.
I don't see the pool.
It's hard to
It's
find.
line of the
It's
floor.
there.
It's the floor block.
It's open underneath.
Oh, okay.
It's 0 foot to the second floor here.
Oh. And what's there on the first floor?
The post is right.
It's open.
Oh.
There's a post right there. Waivers requested. A checklist has not been submitted as required. Items submitted such as a survey need certification as per the checklist. My suggestion as a condition of any approval, if they receive approval, is that a checklist will be submitted, but the applicant is still required to discuss the age of the survey. The front yard porch does not meet the minimum setback required and needs a variance. This variance is not hardship-based. The rear yard setback is miscalculated, as we discussed, and we should go to 0.2 feet. The combined side yard setbacks are not being met despite having the garage below the structure. Actually, lot frontage is separate from lot width. There is a difference. The waiver of the checklist should not be granted as the survey submitted is 13 years old and no waiver has been requested yet. The staff committee clearly states that a checklist is required. Item number 5, the elevation certificate submitted provides grades and NGVD 29 datum. The plans show the existing grade at 8.29 feet NAVD. That needs to be corrected, and the correct elevations need to be shown on the plan. And a surveyor needs to confirm that. No north arrow has been provided, so it's hard to get your bearings which direction's where. Proper number of shrubs should be shown on the plans. The location of the pool equipment has not been shown and needs to be shown. A grass governor strip is required and should be shown. Again, this is a C1 and a C2 criteria case, and proper testimony is required. I give the recommendations on the page 5. And again, we don't need to discuss all those items, but I'll turn it over to the applicant at this point in time.
John, I'll swear you in if you just state your name and address.
John Obelenis, 102 South 8th Street, Vineland, New Jersey.
And you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I will.
And we'll accept this qualification.
Yes, we will.
Thank you. May I introduce my client first to have him say a quick thing about the house?
He needs to be sworn in.
Mr. Schnell, just state your name and address too.
Michael Schnell, 17 North Exeter Avenue.
And you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Briefly, I bought the home back in 2006, was a year-round resident, and my work took me away from here, so now that we're ready to move back, I would like to make Margate my permanent residence, but we need to, make the house a little more substantial for us, so that's the reason we're in here today. Thank you.
Let me ask before you start, are you keeping that tree in the side yard?
That's not my tree, but yes,
That's not your tree?
it's not my tree.
Lucky you.
It's not my tree.
Yeah,
It's the way the lot's angled,
wow, good, okay,
okay?
yes.
Thank you.
Okay, I seem to be the inheritor of these odd-shaped lots over the last couple of years or so between pie shapes and trapezoidal. And I brought a diagram from the code showing their attempt, or I guess the attempt of the code to show how to deal with various types of properties with different angles and different frontages and stuff. And if we look at that, it's all the street straight across. There's some parallel lines, but nothing there matches what we're trying to accomplish here. We have not only a pie-shaped sort of segment property, but we also have two different frontages on the thing, a 15-foot and change and a 25-foot. So it's really a five-sided lot. Now, just quickly, the house itself, we're looking at a house that's about 2,900 square feet, 2.5 stories, 5 bedrooms, typical living, dining on the first, bedrooms upstairs, and a garage below. The house itself conforms to the bulk requirements. It's not maxed out at building coverage, lot coverage, everything is within the amounts that we're allowed to for the building itself. Going back to the site, when you look at the frontage again, where there's a bend in the curb, it really gave us almost no choice as to where to place the garage. And we decided to raise the house up high enough to allow for parking underneath. And that basically took 3 cars off the street. We have 2 cars inside and 1 car outside. And also, I don't think, I thought it was dangerous to have a driveway where there's a bend. I don't think you're allowed to do it. It just didn't seem like the right decision to have a driveway at a bend. I put it to the left side of the property to allow for that driveway on a proper straight run. So this way, the garage is balanced to the right, all the utilities are to the left. Also, I think there's a comment about, just to address some comments from Roger, about the NGVD 29. And we do conform because when we decided to raise the house to 9 feet above grade and have parking below, I stopped thinking about BFE because I knew we were going to be above it. But it's a matter, I have to correct that, should we approve this, that we have changed it from the NADB 88 number. We're still below, we're still above the flood. So the house itself is flood compliant, parking, so everything about the house itself works except for the setbacks. Now, the reason why, and we'll start with the main one, which is the side yard setback to the left. The requirement is 10.9 feet and 5 feet to the right. Again, Roger, you added up the numbers just quickly in one of your comments here is the proposed. Don't we add up the 5 foot and the 8 foot to 13 feet?
For what?
For the cumulative side yard setbacks.
No, it's 37% of the lot width.
Right. So we're 10.91, we're also 5 on the other side. Am I correct?
What's 37% of 43 feet? It comes out to.
That was a number, that was a number. And, but we're asking for, instead of the 10.9 to the left, we're asking for an 8-foot side yard variance, and then the right side conforms. And one of
Well,
the reasons-
your minimums comply, it's just
Right,
your
the minimum-
aggregate.
The aggregate doesn't, but I think the aggregate, don't you add what we're proposing at 8 feet plus
As I
5?
just said, it's 37% of the lot width.
Yeah.
And the lot width is calculated as per the ordinance.
So with this case, by deciding to put the driveway to the right, you know, this property comes down to a very sharp frontage for the property. So by putting the garage to the light, we then put all the circulation to the left, which is stairwells, elevators, bathrooms, anything that is small in size and not conflicting with the garage was located to the left. And the only way to make the stairs work without intruding into the garage was to create this sort of zigzag that, you know, a lot of it was not up to the 8-foot line. A lot of it still is set back far enough, you know, 2 feet back, so it starts to come close to the required 10.9 feet. But, you know, this allowed us to have stairs, access, all to the left and not shrink. You can't shrink the garage because of, by code. Construction code, you can't shrink stairs by code. So everything's kind of forced us, it pushed out the building basically from the garage width minimum, the stair width minimum, you know, out. And that's what forces it to come up. It's 8-foot setback. The angle itself again, we draw, it's 2 pieces. It's 15.34. The other one is 25 feet. If you take a line straight across, it comes out to be 35 feet as a hypotenuse shape. And again, if that were just a 35-foot wide lot, going back 70 feet or 75 feet, that gives you setbacks of 5 feet and 7.99, which is like 5 and 8, which is where we arrived at the 8-foot. Our thought would be to put an 8-foot setback on the left-hand side. Again, because of the restriction, not having cars driving over a bent part of the curb and stuff, cars are over the straight part of the driveway. We talked about the code minimums. The garage had to be a minimum width. We didn't want to encroach into that. So basically, that was the reason why we arrived at that setback. Everything else, like I said, the building conforms. The coverages, we're not asking for a lot. Building coverage, it's within right of that size property. Again, we're forced to squeeze everything in the front. And again, being Margate, I'm going to go then to our porch issue about the variance for the porch. You know, I know it's not a hardship, but again, we're working with a very narrow, very awkward shaped front of the house. And my clients like to live on the front. They want to have a porch deep enough, closer to the street. They know their neighbors. I know it'll be up a little higher, but the belief was that it just increases or it adds to the interaction between the neighbors on the street rather than setting it back. It's not a big number, but it creates a 7-foot porch, which is not big, it's not small, but it allows for at least decent outdoor activity on a very narrow frontage of the property. I mean, we really had no place to go left and right. We thought we would just go a little bit forward. And the 8-foot, we're asking for 8 feet. There's 3 homes that are 5 feet away. So we're not getting close to the homes up and down the street. And there's some that are set back further. So we thought that we're asking for a little bit of a change on the front. setback for the porch, but nothing that would block anybody's views. It would get too close to our other neighbors that are really close to the street itself. So that was the porch issue. The pool, again, I know that the requirement of 7, but that back with the column itself is blocking, the house itself is 8 feet above. It's one of those new trends now, I think, in Margate, where you have a ground floor with parking below, and you have an 8-foot ceiling at that level. So it becomes sort of an indoor-outdoor space, and by paving that part under the house and continuing out to the backyard, it gives you a really nice sort of indoor-outdoor space with the pool, with the indoor patio. It's usable in inclement weather. The pool itself, there's no deck above, so nobody can kind of jump off the deck into the pool. It's basically your structure above. And so we thought we would see how we react to that. It creates a nice.
Turn your mic on. Mike.
I'm kind of lost with this pool thing. I mean, I'm looking at the site plan, and it looks like that's the pool right there, right, on the angle?
Yes, it follows a 6-foot
Right,
setback.
so it's, from the site plan, it looks like it's far away from the house.
It's not.
It's the
Well, there's
second
a dot-
floor.
The shadow of
Underneath, Mike. The
the
second
shadow of
floor,
the first
Mike.
floor is right there.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a note that says, structure or building
All right,
above.
I
and,
get it.
Yeah,
Right.
so that's on the zero line. That's we're asking for the variance that.
Does the column have to be right there by the pool's edge? Can't you pull it in and like cantilever off that? I mean, you could jump out of the pool and you're gonna hit your head right against the column.
Oh, Jim, I never thought about that. That's a good, what would be, 18 inches in, 2 feet in?
3 feet in, right?
Yeah, it's gotta be 3 feet. Well, then it's the overhanging portion of the structure above.
The question is, what rules, the overhang or is it the column itself?
No, it's a portion of the house. It's the actual house starts off
Yeah, but
that
it-
pole.
I thought it was a deck on top.
No, the decks are out front. That pole holds up the house.
Are you saying the house cannot be over the pool?
At 3 feet, it must maintain 3 feet all the way to the sky.
That's what I thought,
Everybody understand?
Yeah,
Well-
that's what they're asking the variance for.
Right.
Right.
Gonna get any sun at that pool?
Well, the
Morning.
pool's out, the pool is not under the house. The pool is on the outside in the
Outside.
backyard. It's not under the house, so it's gonna be outside. But if we had that 3-foot setback.
Oh, it's not a deck.
It's a
yeah,
house.
Part of the day you'll be in the sun, part of the day you won't. I can't say that's gonna be
It
all
does.
the time. It's not that,
You
all
have
the
to go to
morning
the back
hours,
page.
all the morning hours, it comes around until about 2
that's
o'clock.
showing the first
Then
floor.
beyond after 2 o'clock,
Right.
it
On the
decides
floor
shade,
above.
anything else. But the idea is that if we follow the setbacks of 3 feet.
Board members, stop talking. Not you, John.
We would come up with a 5-foot pool, again, it's a difficult squeeze play between a good floor plan that's consistent with Margate's homes in the area, backyard amenities, 14.2 feet. The idea is that by having this open space under the house, which allows you to feel like, we're really indoor, it's really I think a nice trend that we're going in, that gives you that usability of a space during any kind of weather, during the summertime, and then you have the pool beyond that. And, I think structurally we'll be able to, if that's something we can do, accomplish where you have a cantilever. But again, we have to decide that part of the building that lines up with the edge of the pool, that's what the code does not allow you to do. It says you have to have 3 feet from anything within, I guess you call it the sky exposure plane or something, that extends it up to infinity, whatever it is.
Well, if you were, I'm sure that it could be engineered at least to slide the column back and, right, Clem, and just, beef up the column.
I don't know how you're
or-
going to get a footing under that pier if it's right at the.
Well, that and the
pool's-
coping of the
pool's
pool.
edge.
Say what?
I said, I don't know how you'd get a footing under that
You
column.
you have
right
to
at-
use a piling.
Right at the pool
You
edge.
just use a piling.
We're gonna do a grade beam,
Yeah,
a
but
grade
it's
beam
gotta, it's
foundation.
gotta come up right at the
It's gonna be in
wall
the
of
pool.
It would become part of the pool.
Well, we've done structures that were part of the pool and part of the foundation, where one acts like a bearing wall for the pool, so. But that was in a time when there were no setbacks for a pool. There's a bunch I know in Denver that did that, where it scared me, and I think maybe Jim and I had a conversation about that years ago, about who defines where can a pool go up against the wall of the house, I didn't do that because it scared me. But in this case, there's no wall. It's basically an overhang that's 8 feet above you, and the building goes up beyond that.
Does this have to be on piling, John? This house? From, make it even more complicated. And Jim's idea of moving the column is certainly a good one.
Well, it would benefit your client, too.
Say again?
It benefits the homeowner.
Yeah, but
But we're still saying the structure is gonna be over the pool. The edge.
yeah,
equal-
these are two
equal
different
to
problems.
the edge.
We got
The structure will be
The
equal,
house above is
and
at
the
the edge
structure
of
is
the pool.
supposed to be 3 feet back from there.
But it's the second floor when there's no deck there.
Right.
Well, how does our ordinance read?
Still a variance, correct?
It's a variance.
It's a variance. John,
For the 3 feet.
One at a time.
If the second floor comes in 3 feet, the column question goes away.
The whole house moves.
No, you just have to pull the second floor in 3 feet.
Well, if I was applying, I wouldn't want to do that. I wouldn't want to lose 3 feet when there's no reason not to have it.
Right, I'm agreeing with Rich. And just a quick question.
Wait,
just
can
for
you repeat that?
I agree with Rich.
Thank you.
The Grand Poobah. On the rear elevation, you're showing the back stairs and then just a single window. I'm having a little trouble equating that to what's on the inside of it. What is that window? Is that a den? Is that a kitchen? Is that? What room is that?
Okay, on the first floor, that is a den at the rear.
Okay, so the window there is just for a den?
It's for a den.
And then the kitchen's on the other side?
Yes.
So there's really no, unless somebody jumps out a small window, a 3-year window, there's really no detriment to having that pool there. If you slide that column back, then you'd be fine, I think. There's nothing there to go jump in.
John? Could you eliminate the 2 windows and those 2 back rooms, so there's no way, nothing to jump out of?
The one back here, there's one window back at the den.
Both floors.
Oh, here.
You'd still have big double windows.
It would be the one in the corner, the one that's the most
the-
effective, right?
The other thing you could do is, if we're gonna get into this, which I don't really agree with that whole thing anyway, is, unless there's a deck there, is you could do like a higher window, you know what I mean? Like an
Transom
awning
type.
style window up there, so you'd still get light and air if you wanted to. you
Yeah, that's a
know.
good idea.
Because you're really, that side of the house is gonna be the least lighted, yeah, like that, right?
Yeah, like a,
So you
a
could
transom,
copy
like
the
if you
one
had a
above
headboard
it.
or something, actually probably a good place to put it, where the headboard is and stuff.
You could
Yeah.
copy the one above it and
Yeah.
eliminate the egress.
Did you say where the headboard was?
I'm just saying it would be a good place, if you're gonna put a headboard, that would fall. for
In the
a
den.
transom type window.
In the
Well,
den.
The den, you can either eliminate or put a transom also, that works.
Is that what you're talking about, the den? with
Well,
the-
actually, 2 different, the bedroom's upstairs, the bedroom above the den, which again has a window that faces down into the pool, so if we made that a high transom,
Right.
it's a great place for a
Southern
headboard. It works well, you know, I mean, do I owe you guys design money or something? It's,
Right.
coming up with ideas that I didn't come up with, but that works. I think that's something that we can make work, and I think my clients are amenable to putting in transom windows at that location, I think Clem is suggesting. Just 50, 5 feet above.
John, you forgot a window and a bath on the back wall too, on the first floor bath. It's not on the wall. There's only one window in the back. It's a 3046, and right next to the door, there's a window in the bathroom.
It's not, doesn't coordinate?
It's not on the plan.
Yeah, there is, Jim.
No, it's not shown on the window though.
Next to the kitchen?
No, next to the kitchen door.
Yeah, there's a window in there, opposite the toilet.
These things aren't required and they're not variances. I really don't, I think we're going a little far with designing this house for them.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's here.
I agree.
Thank you,
Where's the air conditioners, John?
Let's stick to what they need variances for.
Okay.
Where's the pool equipment going, John?
Well, it's funny you ask, because there was a big debate between the clients and myself, and maybe the husband and wife, about having a pool in the first place. So we put it in the plans to see what we can get, and I think the idea was that if you do approve the pool, you have to worry about the pool equipment. Now, we do have space in the garage about 2 feet of clears. And if we can work it out with the builder, that we can tuck it in between, maybe create an opening between the rafters with some microlams and raise them, just a part of the equipment that needs to be above flood. The rest of it can be down at lower levels and stuff. So I believe we can fit something in that space at the raised garage level.
Within the house footprint?
Within the house footprint itself, correct.
Or even in that storage area closer to the pool.
But we don't have a problem with it being near the property line or anything. It would be within the house area.
I would think, Rich, as long as it's inside the house, it doesn't matter. if it's-
Yeah, that's my point.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Well, the rest of my case, I have nothing else to say other than questions from the board.
Where are the air conditioning?
You know, it's, good question.
Another funny question.
We talked about putting them on this side of the house here, which is well past the 5-foot requirement and stuff, and this is that, again, nothing. Not showing the plan, but, we will add that.
Footing at that column. John, what date can we put on these plans?
How about October 4th?
That works.
You done?
Just going back to this column again, are we moving that column? Because you show a 4-foot footing at the column. You're gonna have 2 foot of that footing in the pool.
We have to look at that because,
I agree.
If he needs to place a special piling for that. I mean, again, I work with, Rich Sawyer, work with Rich Sawyer, where we have situations like this where you combine footings with pool structure, and it can be done. But we would have to coordinate that with.
I hope we don't have to remove that pool.
The pool engineer.
John, you just need to tell us what you're putting in and where it's being located, that's all. So we know what to vote on. So if you're putting in a piling, say it's a piling. If you're putting in a footing, say it's a footing. And where is it moving back from the edge of the pool?
Well, here's.
Yes, it's just a simple,
It's a question, well, it's not that simple. The question is, we can solve it structurally. You tell me, can we bring the column 1.5 feet away from the pool? Can we bring it 2 feet away? Does it have to be 3 feet away?
but
I'll
we're
make it
not
work
here to
structurally.
design this for you. You're the architect. You
No, I
have to
know.
tell us what you're gonna do.
3 feet.
3 feet, and we'll make it work structurally with 3 feet, whether it's a cap piling, double piles, that will support that building load at that location.
That's up to
like,
Jimmy.
We can make,
3 feet is all.
I know we can make that work, because I've done that before.
And I think your homeowners will be much more happy than having that piling right at the edge of the pool.
I agree, I think it's a nice solution.
We'll send you a bill, John. Anything else? Quit while you're ahead. Anything else?
Finished, thank you.
You are finished?
The survey. John, actually, the owner, do you agree that nothing's been changed on the survey? I'm fine with that.
You've owned it since the survey?
Yes.
If there's nothing else on the board, anyone from the public, questions, comments? Come up and be sworn in and state your name and address.
Name and address, and I'll swear you in.
Sharon Bulgarelli, 112 North Washington.
112
Right here, Margate.
Washington. Sharon, can you spell your last name?
Bulgarelli.
And do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
The pool equipment being inside the garage, is that safe? Wouldn't it be noisy?
The idea is to reduce the noise and have to follow the construction code and fire code.
Right, but I would just be concerned inside the house. Like if I was living inside the house, having that pool equipment inside.
Actual habitable space is above it. This is
Right.
within the.
Okay, I just,
Right.
like noise-wise, it just,
Well, we found that it's less noise for the neighbors when people we changed the rules to allow the pool
Oh,
equipment to
okay,
be
I
inside
see.
the area, and it's less noise for the neighbors.
Right.
If the people in the house suffer, that's their choice from the
Right.
noise, but it's
And I
not.
was just thinking the opposite. I was just thinking of myself in the house.
Yeah.
Thinking of the pool equipment, because.
Well, our job's kind of to protect the neighbors
Yeah,
from the
right.
noise.
I forgot about
Right.
the neighbors thing, yeah. Okay,
All right.
that's it. That's all. the
Thanks.
questions.
Thank you.
Public portion is closed. There's no other discussion from the board. Would you read the motion, please?
Sure. What, are we gonna checklist, Roger? Are they gonna supply that? What they are?
Supply checklist.
Supply checklist, but waiver from the survey based on the applicant's testimony. And how about, we talked about the window, transient window?
Is that, they still need a variance anyway.
Right. So I'm gonna leave that out as a condition. They can do what they want there. So someone needs to make a motion for C variance relief for the following. It's a front yard setback to the porch of 8.37 feet where 9.54 feet is required, a rear yard setback for the building of 14 feet where 14.2 feet is required, a combined side yard setback of 10.91 feet where 15.91 feet is required, and a variance for the swimming pool clearance on the one side to the vertical structure, on the other as a condition of approval, they're gonna move the column 3 feet away from the edge of the pool or the piling. There's also gonna be a waiver from submitting a current survey based on the applicant's testimony that nothing's changed, and the other conditions will be the applicant will just submit the application checklist and any other conditions set forth in Mr. McLaren's report, and the applicant will comply with any representations it made during the course of the hearing.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Tom Collins,
Give you a lot of credit. You've got a really strange lot, and it's really hard to design something on a lot of that type. So I know there's a lot of things missing and some mistakes in here, but considering everything and what's existing and what's being proposed, the fact that you're putting the parking underneath, which is something I've been pushing forever and ever, I think you're actually making a major, major improvement to the neighborhood. The hardship you've caused by the size of the lot offsets any negative impacts to the neighborhood. The design of the house and what you're doing to the neighborhood offsets any other variance relief that we look at. I see no negative. It's all positive. I wish you a lot of luck, and I approve.
Clem Osleski,
With the conditions that we've put on the application and agreed to by the owner, I think the proposal meets the intent of the zoning ordinance, so I vote in favor.
Richard Patterson,
I vote in favor of the application. I don't see any detriment to the neighborhood. I see hardships in the shape of the lot and the design that had to go into this. I see no danger with the pool because there's no access to the pool from the second floor. So I vote in favor.
Michael Cristaldi,
With the rest of the board members and the concessions made with the pool, I vote in favor of the application.
Jim Galantino,
They solved the post problem, which I thought was kind of odd. Looked like it was right almost in the pool, which really concerned me because when you're in a pool, you're not conscious of the area around you. You're swimming, you're having fun, and next thing you know, you're running into a pole. So that was my only factor, and I agree with Mike. So I think you proved your the hardship with the outside lot. I approve.
Margaret Gubernalty,
I agree with the other board members based upon the altered shape of the lot, as well as the concessions that were made. I vote in favor of the application.
Michael Richmond,
I think the lot does cause a hardship, and I think we eliminated the safety issues with the pool, so I'm going to vote yes.
application passes 7-0.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Question.
Yes.
Are we telling everyone to keep the application that got postponed to next month? Or are we getting this next?
Did you, are they part of the package? Yes, you should keep.
Yeah, keep it.
Okay, keep the Iroquois Avenue, South Iroquois, keep those plans.
Or actually, if you want to give it back to us.
Yeah. Give, right. that's
Or
what-
give it back and it'll be in your new packet.
Yeah, there you go. No, let it give it back and it'll be in a new package, because I lose it.
Yeah, but they gotta be resorted anyway, next month's package. I would suggest you bring them back to us now.
And leave them as part of the whole package.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Craig loses them all the time. so-
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
All right, since we lost Clem, can we close the meeting, or we got more?
No, we're not closed.
Got something to say.
Clem, the meeting's in session, please. Outside of the planning board, several members of the community got together, including me. I'll actually list me, Brian Hiltner, Dana Hiltner, Bob Huey, Michael Collins, Eric Goldstein, Joel Frankel, and Lou Friedman. On our own, got together just to see if there was anything we could do to help the city in making it a little bit easier and affordable to live in Margate. And in discussions with Rich Deeney, we wanted it to be a one and done, and here's our suggestions and run away, but it never ends up that way. He wanted us to actually form a committee outside of the planning board, but he suggested that I form this committee as an advisory group to the planning board. I want to pass out an email from Deeney to Jim, what's his name?
Rutala.
Jim Rutella.
What is it?
Rutala.
Rutala. Kind of an outline of what he wants to do, because this committee will be working with him. I don't know if you know him, he's a grant man, but he's also a planner, and he puts a lot of things together, so. This kind of covers what we're trying to do. So in talking with Leo, we're not sure if this should be under if we can have it as an advisory panel to the planning board or the city itself. But either way, we have this committee, and at this point, I'm appointing them as a subcommittee of the planning board, but that's subject to Leo and the city attorney working that out. They are basically looking at the area, and if you look at any of the, we have all kinds of map presentations and everything, but the area back that Tom had talked about before about trying to make it more family-friendly.
I don't see how you're gonna lower prices.
Pardon me?
How you gonna lower prices?
Well, Brian
Easy.
offered
It's-
to,
It's not a matter of lowering prices, it's showing that you can buy a $150,000 more house in Margate with the same monthly payment, so that's how you lower the price.
and Brian's gonna forgive his commission.
Brian, right, if you buy from Brian, there's no commission, I'll do the tax returns for free, Eric's gonna do the work for free, Joel's gonna pull teeth for free, and Mike Collins is gonna give everything free at the hardware store.
We're gonna eat it Boca.
And to be honest, if we limit where you can't put a 5-bedroom house in that area,
Well, there's some things we can do and some things we can't, but that's why we have the expert in Rutala, who is a planner and who comes up with these suggestions. It might not even be limited to that area, but that's the area where it is somewhat feasible. No normal family can afford any new construction in Margate. So there's houses back there that are affordable, and it's not only, we'll get into it later, but there's a lot of things we've come up with that may or may not help. We've also said to the city, if you're not interested, we're done, but the city has shown interest.
Excuse me, what area
Yes.
are we talking about again?
Well, what's feasible, not to set aside an area, but what's
Right.
feasible is the area back where you live and I live, and, Douglas Avenue, and
Right.
the area back in that area where it's currently, Jim had given us a map of where the families with children are, and we're not talking about just moving families with children into town, but just year-round families.
Right.
And the concern is, I always use Castles and Stephen Cookies as an example. We're in a symbiotic relationship with the summer residents, because if year-round residents go down past the tipping point, we lose those amenities, and then the summer people, I mean, that's
Right.
bad for them.
Right.
So maybe there's nothing that can be done. I know it's been tried to be done before, but like I said, the group of us got together, and the group is, I say, a pretty good group. It covers a lot of area of the town and a lot of contacts in the town. And we limited it to that amount. We didn't want 100 people giving ideas and going back and forth. And this is a bunch that we know each other, get along, and, you know, can talk without too many ideas. So I just wanted to bring that up, that I, at this point, am making this subcommittee, and it may be subject to change. And like I said, this kind of gives an idea that we are progressing further than we thought we would get, because now there's actually a budget for Rutala to help us.
Good.
So.
I'm the city liaison between the board and the city on this committee also.
So you're gonna have a lot of gray hair?
No.
No more than he's got now. So I just wanted to, because the planning board may be mentioned, if it's ever, any of this gets out, I just wanted to let everybody know what it is, and if,
This is just a exploratory committee, non-binding.
this has, it has nothing to do with the city really, but we are advising Rutala, and this is what we're looking at, with the city's blessing of, yeah, we like those ideas,
Then turn
talk to
around and
him.
come to the planning
So we have, yes, nothing is binding here, nothing's binding on the planning board, nothing's binding on the city.
Basically, it's an extension of the original intent of the master plan. We're going to act on that a little bit further. You know, there's a lot of outside factors involved, and we're going to try to see what we can do from a planning perspective and a zoning perspective to do what you guys want to do.
And there's other things, we'll get into it later, but there's other things we're doing besides the family thing. There's a few other things that we think we can do better than what's being done now. And as far as the committee, I'm there from the planning board point of view, Brian from the realtor's point of view. Dana has handled Paula's marketing forever, and nobody markets better than Paula, which is really Dana, and she's working on some marketing aspects of it. Huey, I don't know if you know him, but he's got credentials coming out the wazoo as far as these types of things, and he's actually done things in North Jersey where there's been, not saying it can be done here, but we're looking at through him ways of providing down payment money, because that is the big difference, is you have to have a bigger, pardon me?
He fought me at Stockton.
Yeah, I think he's a brilliant man, and he's very interesting to talk to.
Did you say down payment money, make it available for some?
Yeah, to help make up the down payment money. I mean, not grants, but, loans. I'm not saying that'll happen, but loans to help you with the down payment. Mike Collins is a businessman, well-known in the area, works with a Republican club, not that one's better than the other, but again, there's contacts out there, and he has people. Eric Goldstein, not only the school board attorney, but attorney appears before us and is very familiar. Lou Friedman, from just another businessman's point of view, and Joel Frankel's also on the school board, so we're getting his perspective of it. So that's the group that got together. So, especially the
Except for the
planning board.
guys.
So I just wanted to bring that to your attention, and if nobody has anything else, go ahead, Steve.
Microphone.
We all wanted to get we're looking for tree ordinances.
Mhm.
So I went to the meeting, and from the Sustainable Margate point of view, I wanted to ask the commission to consider it. And I know that I think what they were looking at right now, it's a little restrictive or too restrictive, and they didn't want to go in that direction. And I might have said some things that might come out the wrong way, but the idea is that I wanted back the planning board with the tree ordinance. So Rich Deeney said that why don't you get the planning board to adopt the forestry plan? To bring up to speed, we created a forestry plan that was done with a $3,000 grant that we did about 2 years ago. And the forestry plan is just that, it's a plan. It's what happens if a tree goes down, if there's a storm, where do they put them, what's Public Works' responsibility, if it's our responsibility. Green team responsibility is like a lot of education about why it's important and the necessity of it. And then it's basically should not conflict at all with what we have on the books. It's actually kind of backs it up. But we be looking into things like, look, are the species adequate, and maybe we need to update and stuff like that.
Well, you showed me a list that you went over with a
Yes.
state arborist or whatever that said, these are the trees we use and half of them should not be used.
Not
There's
half
other
of them, but
trees.
just a few of them.
Well, whatever, these shouldn't be used and we should know that. Roger should have that
Yeah,
list,
we
which he
did-
does, but.
We hired an intern to do a tree inventory, and so we did come up with that. I don't know where it is right now, but I'm looking for it. And it was shocking that the amount of trees that, well, I brought this thing up with the Bradford pears, which is now the dominant tree and stuff, so that's going to be taken away. In fact, Roger mentioned to me.
Yeah, going
that it's
forward,
been
that's
going
not
for years, yeah.
recommendations, right?
So we would like to have the planning board adopt the forestry plan.
If you could get that to everybody, we could do that at the next meeting, but everybody's got to look at it, but just,
Yeah, it's huge. I know it's a 38-page document, so it's probably sad,
they
but
could say they looked at it.
the first
You have to have the
pages-
opportunity to look at it.
Okay.
Okay? You have it on, it's the PDF that you can send everybody, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, get that out, you have everybody's email.
Rich, if it's 38 pages, we should take a little time to, yeah.
You need more than a month?
Will make sense.
All you have the opportunity to look at it, you don't have to look at it, you just have the opportunity to look at it.
Vote for something, what do you think with Congress?
Next month. Okay, so we'll do it next month, get it out as soon as you can, and we'll vote on it next month.
We'll make the sets of that in our office for pickup, so you don't have to use your own printers.
Is that what it was, you didn't want to waste the paper?
No, I just want to have time to actually analyze it.
Right, a whole month,
I have nothing else to do with it.
me neither.
We'll double-side it so we can save a tree.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, there was we put together, Roger put together, Steve put together, we basically ended up with a ordinance from another town, and I think we introduced it as a Berlin ordinance in Margate. It actually still had Berlin up there. And a lot of pushback, it was too harsh. And I think we can come to some compromise, even if it's at worst case that we have some control, leave people's private property alone. I'm not saying this is what it is, but this is like, what I'm saying is the least we should do is in the right of way that the city actually owns a property to have some control there. And then we're not dictating to people what they can do on their own property. So,
Or just a government strip to be on that.
that's in the right of way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we require the homeowner to plan it and maintain it, so there's an overlap.
Picky. So anyway, excuse me? You ready? Margaret's ready. Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Meeting adjourned. All in favor? Aye. Meeting adjourned.